Hello and welcome to this episode of Tripology, the only backpacking show where two best friends call each other up from locations around the world. I'm Alun and I'm here with one of the greatest backpackers on planet Earth. It's the ever impersonal Adam.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us for yet another week of Tripology podcast. If you're new to the show, essentially it's about two best mates chasing each other all over the planet, trying to make each other laugh.
Yeah, I'm going to make you laugh ever so much this week, Adam, because I, of course, am continuing my journey around South Korea.
I'm looking forward to it, mate. We've been texting back and forth, but as people know that listen to the show, we don't like to talk that much off air because we've just got so many stories we want to share with the listening audience in real time. So I'm chomping at the bit to know what you've been getting up to, mate.
Well, speaking about chomping at the bit, I've been hanging out in some Korean saunas. I've been going all over the place. Last time I spoke to you about my time in Korea, I was very, very jet lagged. I was very, very tired, but I have had time now to settle into the country, explore properly, make some observations about Korean culture. And I'm interested in comparing notes with you because you, of course, have been to Korea. So it's one of the first times in Tripology history where we've both been to a country at separate times and have made sort of different analyses and observations about it.
Yeah, going to be really interesting. I'm going to have to sort of compartmentalize my time in Japan as well because you haven't been to Japan, and it's quite normal for people that have been to both to compare both. And I don't think that's completely fair. I don't think the South Koreans would like that either. But I am interested in hearing what your experience is like. I've given you a lot of tips, mostly restaurants, let's be honest. You're looking the same size, so I imagine you're not eating as much as I had hoped you would. But what have been some of the observations, mate? What's going on in South Korea?
I like South Korea. I'll start off by saying that I am having a good time and I am enjoying it. So I want to put that out there. It's definitely a place that I recommend visiting. The food that you've recommended, the coffee culture has been excellent. And, you know, I'm having a great time. But I'm here in the cold season. It's winter. So I'm very, very cold very, very often. And being winter is also the off season, which means that hostels are pretty empty. And I'm feeling a little bit lonely some of the time. It's been quite hard to meet people. And that is exacerbated by the fact that I really do believe this to be true. I think South Korea might be one of the most impersonal countries to travel in that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, it's quite a negative thing to say, especially coming from you, considering you've been to 70 odd countries or whatever it is at this stage. And I do think that when you walk around, you've got your eyes wide open, and it's natural that we would compare places that we've been. I do certainly agree in some respects. The most impersonal is not a nice award to give a country. But what sort of things are you talking about specifically? Because I've got a couple of examples, and I imagine they're quite similar to yours.
Well, I hesitate to say it because I think that it feels like I'm tarring Korea with a brush for a problem that's obviously exacerbated. It might seem like the fact that I don't speak Korean. So, is it really impersonal, or is it just the fact that I can't speak to anyone because I don't speak the language?
The cheek of it, he's put himself up in an Airbnb and he's complaining that he's not meeting anyone. He's taking absolutely no effort to speak Korean.
I know. Listen, I understand it if you're listening to the show and that's what you're thinking, but let me dissuade you from thinking that way, and let me tell you why I actually feel like it's impersonal. Because I'm going to focus on the things that happen that are a universal Korean experience that Korean people themselves must go through and deal with whilst they're in Korea. The first is that in coffee shops and restaurants and places where you might go in to get food or drinks, it's very, very common practice to have a great big interactive touchscreen where you just pick what you want, and then the barista or the waitress behind the counter just gets pinged with your order and proceeds to make it. That's very convenient for me as a non-Korean speaker, but it is very, very impersonal. Like, I've witnessed and have myself gone into many establishments and had zero interaction with anyone working there because I've just gone like beep, bloop, beep, and then had something brought to me.
You said you couldn't speak Korean.
Often it's brought to me by a robot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I do have a robot waitress story that I'm not going to tell on the show right now because it only happened the other day and I wasn't planning on it. So yeah, that's funny, but that is certainly not an experience that I look for. You know me as someone who likes interacting. I will actually take myself out just so that I can interact with people. I'm not even sure that I'm hungry or that I want anything to eat or that I need to buy anything from the supermarket. I just like going out and having an interaction and talking to people. So when that is removed from the situation, it becomes pretty hollow and a bit rigid.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It is cool. It is cool to go into a restaurant, touch on a touchscreen what I want, get a robot to bring it over, and when I'm done, just like leave.
Are you trying to interact with the robot? Is there some sort of conversation you can have there? Or
I'm married to one of those robots now. They're my only company. But because often when you do the touchscreen thing, you also pay with your credit card. So it's all just taken care of and handled. That's actually objectively very convenient for someone who can't speak Korean. But it does leave you feeling a bit hollow, especially in the winter season where there's so few travelers or people to communicate with anyway.
Yeah. Have you noticed that there's a very specific type of traveller in these hostels that you've been in? Because it's not the most popular time to go to a country, the winter. I would encourage people to go on holiday or backpacking to places where it is the off season because you get a completely different experience, usually a much more local one where things are slightly easier in terms of booking and, getting into restaurants and whatever. It's nowhere near as busy. However, you do meet far less backpackers.
Well, yeah, let me get on to the people in the hostels, mate, because that's is Korea an impersonal country? Paragraph 2 is that many of the hostels, hotels, anywhere that you want to stay, operate an entirely self-contained, self-check-in system. So I would say probably 80% of the places that I've stayed, you basically book on Hostelworld or booking.com and you get a little PIN code. And then when you go to the door, you just type that PIN code in. And there's, in some of them, there's been a sheet of paper that says my name and what bed I should take. In others, they've sent that information via an email. I've stayed in places where I've not had to interact or talk with anyone at all. And because it's the off season, it's happened on several occasions where the dorm room is empty. I've been in a 10-bed dorm for 2 nights where it was just me.
Oh my goodness.
And my waitress robot wife.
Yeah. I'm going to come out and say it. I think that is shit. I think that is technology and efficiency becoming so advanced in the wrong direction. I don't think that hostels and hostel culture was sort of founded on efficiency, really. I don't think that's its strongest card is them being efficient. I think it's more about a feel between like-minded people, community, and this sort of stuff. And certainly on the topic of hostels, I might have mentioned on an episode when I was in Korea, so this is now the back end of 2024. It was in, I'm going to get this wrong, but Myeongdong in Seoul.
You got it right.
Very big commercial sort of business district. It was a capsule hotel, kind of hostel. So already, you're sort of self-contained in your bed. And it was exactly as you've described. You get a little code, you put it in, lets you through the door, then you get some card or something. No one's at reception. The problem is that I observed when I was even having breakfast the next day, even though there are other backpackers there, because the checking in and entering the hostel is so impersonal and there are these sort of metaphorical barriers, it actually stops people from talking to one another. It like bleeds into the culture.
Yeah, I do think there's something that opens you up about interacting with the receptionist and her showing you around, or him showing you around,
or a robot
showing you. If anyone shows you around, it opens you up, I think.
Yeah, because you walk into a kitchen where there's already someone cooking, and you do the little nod. You got your backpack on still, and it's like, you're right, yeah, all right. And then that's someone you end up talking to later, and that's how hostels work.
I saw you. Do you remember me? You saw me doing the check-in process, and You were cooking and I had a backpack on, so we're friends now.
You are totally right, mate. And anyone that's been to South Korea, if you're listening to this now and you feel any way about what we're talking about, then do let us know if you agree or disagree, because it is interesting. And yeah, I concur, mate. I do agree. I think if there are people in charge in South Korea who look after hostels, if there's some sort of governing body or committee, then please can you stop it? Because we'd prefer to chat to some people.
Well, I don't know. That technological advancement extends even to all the municipal systems. Like on the public transport, even on the buses, it's so unusual to me. You go, you tap on, and no one says like "안녕하세요" to the driver or "감사합니다." They tap the card, and the card machine says "감사합니다," and the driver just looks straight forward.
Oh wow!
So it's like a very, I mean, I struggle to use any word other than impersonal. It's just like the whole system runs so technologically efficiently that it has removed the need for that human interaction, and therefore feels a little bit different. That's the last negative thing I'm going to say about it, though, because I have actually genuinely loved my time here.
But do you think that's a known consequence? Do you think that when local councils or businesses are bringing in these types of technologies, they're fully aware of the impact? And I mean, at the end of the day, it just has to be cost cutting, doesn't it? You don't have to pay a human to do the job.
I think that it's a self-fulfilling cycle, really, because now I've got so used to it, the convenience of it. Last night, I was feeling tired. I'd been traveling all day, and I was walking down the street looking for some food, and I was peering through the windows looking for a touchscreen to make sure I didn't have to interact with anyone. So I've got just addicted.
Oh shit! Okay.
And then today I checked into this lovely hotel to record Tropology, and it wasn't self-check-in. There was a guy at the counter, and as soon as I saw him, I started panicking, like, oh my God, what do I do in the social interaction? Have you got a robot? I just need a robot to check in, please.
To talk to instead. Well, you'll know, and probably anyone listening to this, and maybe even anyone who's met me, but certainly you will know that it's a part of travel that I like the most, is these interactions. And I feel like it's also my strongest card. It's what I sort of am best at. So I think I'm biased in saying that this is a negative for our experience of travel. Because it just makes my life so much more difficult. I feel like there are more obstacles in the way because I'm not technologically savvy. And as soon as I get sent in a pin and, I know I have to figure out some piece of software, I start panicking. It's squeaky bum time. I think, oh God, this is normally the sort of question I just turn to a receptionist and say, can you do it for me instead?
Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting debate, mate, because I said Korea's quite impersonal, and you immediately were like, oh, that's a negative thing to say. But there are certain things that you don't want to be personal. If your ATM is personal, you're like, fuck off and let me get my money. You don't want to be like, hi, I'll get to your money in a second, but first tell me how your day was. There are certain things which are efficiently run impersonally.
What about the bagel? The London Bagel Museum. That is the most impersonal shopping experience I've had to date. I hated it. I hated everything about it. You turn up, there's someone there to greet you with an iPad, but that's just so that they can put your email address in, collect some data. You even have to enter which country you're from. Why the fuck do they need to know that? I'm here for a bagel. And then you get added to a list, and then it's an hour and 15-minute wait or whatever I had to do. It's changed the experience of just going into a bakery and buying a bagel to something that is completely unrecognizable. And maybe Korea is the only country in which that could have happened. I don't know.
Maybe, mate, but it has really got under my skin, and in the sense that it's sort of in my DNA now, because I find myself after just 15 minutes being quite uncomfortable with the level of interaction I'm having with you. So I'm going to go off and calm myself down with a conversation with a robot, and we'll be right back after this. If you're enjoying this chat, why not consider signing up to our Patreon, where there's bonus content at the end of every single Tropology episode.
You gain access to the Lost and Found section, where we continue chatting about all things travel, and a host of other shows every single month.
So go on, sign up, click it. There's a link in the description. We'll see you there. So maybe it seems like a bit of a negative start, but trust me, it's just an observation, Adam. We're allowed to have observations, and I've had a really, really good time. Let me tell you about a couple of the things that I've done while I've been in Seoul, starting my journey in Korea. I've done a little hike up to Seoul Tower. That was nice.
Was it impersonal?
Well, I spoke to a friend on the phone, actually, whilst I was hiking that tower, so it was very personal in that way. But one experience I had, which I found a lot too personal, and often I find these experiences to be too personal, was a guided tour. There's one example where I would have loved it if it was just facts presented to me with no filter and, for God's sake, no comedy. But unfortunately, my tour guide did feel that it was necessary to put some jokes in there, try and get everyone to laugh. You know what it's like on a guided tour. I went, of course, to the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, that space between North and South Korea that basically, no one can cross or go into. But if you get up there with a pair of binoculars, you can have ever such a good look at the other side.
Oh, you went on a tour where you were given binoculars?
Well, either that or I found a way to sneak some binoculars there, and I'm not telling you which one is true.
Well, no, this is interesting, mate, because I was on a tour where we didn't receive binoculars.
Right.
But there was another tour that was at this sort of, you call it like an observation deck or something like that, right? Where you can peer into North Korea.
Yeah.
And there was another group that did have binoculars. And some people in my group got jealous of the other group. And they said, well, why haven't we fucking been given binoculars? That's annoying. We just use our 20/20 vision, do we, to try and see what's going on over there?
I had ever such a good peek, mate. I've not got 20/20 vision. As you know, my eyes are what can only be described as barely functioning. But even I, with a powerful enough magnifying lens, was able to have a look at a genuine North Korean village several kilometers away from the DMZ. I had a little peek over there, and it's my pleasure to announce that there seemed to be nothing above board going on whatsoever.
Yeah, just no. All the propaganda was unnecessary. I mean, there's a bit of propaganda going on the DMZ tour, isn't there? From my experience, anyway.
Very praiseful about Korea, the Republic of, but from what I could see, North Korea, didn't seem like there was many people across the border. It was sort of an empty town, perhaps just a little propaganda village that didn't really have anyone in.
Yeah, a couple of buildings.
There was a cutout of Kim Jong-un.
Waving, was he, to a mechanized arm or something?
Yeah, an animatronic Kim Jong-un just on the border of the village. He's there. He lives at the border.
So, I mean, North Korea, famously not the, is the butt of some jokes, for sure. Strange to maybe joke about it on the tour as well. Try and lighten the mood, maybe.
Very much so. There was a joke a minute coming from old Dennis, the tour guide. It didn't really have an angle, Dennis's jokes. He was just sort of like playing for laughs often. One that I can think of at the top of my head, he was like, oh, my middle name is Excuse Me. So if you need me, just refer to me by my middle name. Now, I don't think that's funny because I just don't think the joke works on any level. I think if you analyze that joke, I think it fails to do what a joke should do.
Oh, right. So the traditional format or structures of jokes, tried and tested joke structures.
Well, we can analyze it if you want, but I mean, he's saying, if you need me, say excuse me. That's like the core message. But he's thought, how can I present that in a humorous package? And he's gone with, I'll tell them that my middle name is in fact Excuse Me. And it got a laugh.
Well, so
people, there was two German sisters sat next to me on the bus. They laughed.
Well, maybe he just knew his audience. If the people in the bus laughed, then it was funny. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
the guy's a comedian. He's in the wrong job.
I guess so, yeah. My middle name's Excuse Me. If you need anything, just refer to me by my middle name. Maybe it's the perfect joke. Maybe I don't get it.
Did you feel obliged to whenever you needed to ask him a question.
I felt jealous. I was saying to the German girls, I was like, if you think that sort of stuff's funny, you should listen to Tripology podcast every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcast. If that's making you laugh, you'll positively wet your pants listening to my show in which I make jokes for a job, okay? So if you think that Dennis has really got your funny bone rattling, you'll be very surprised what me and my friend Adam can do. That's every week on a Tuesday.
Oh, that's classic. Talk to me about the tour, mate. What did you think overall? Value for money? Did you go down into that really long tunnel that's quite difficult and sweaty to walk back up?
I went into the tunnel. I think that tunnel's a bit of an embarrassment because it took them weeks to find it. They detected detonations.
Yeah.
South Korea did. And they were like, oh my God, we've got to find what this is. It took them weeks to find it. When they did find it, it was already abandoned. And when asked, North Korea said, oh, we was looking for coal. And they were like, there isn't any coal in that tunnel. And they were like, well, that's why we abandoned the project.
I mean, it's logical.
And then they went, well, it came quite close to our capital city. And they were like, don't know anything about that. We were just looking for coal.
Dear, oh dear. It's not the only one as well, is it? There's a few from memory.
No, it's one of many coal mines in the area.
Just trying to find coal by trial and error. Oh, no, not this one either.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, back it up.
Well, the DMZ tour, apart from the fact that I thought it was, the tour guide essentially wasn't funny, I did think it was of value to do. I think it was important to see. I think if you go to the Republic of Korea, people are going to ask, oh, did you go to North Korea? That said, I think it's a harrowing, ongoing historical situation in which families have been separated and it's really, really negative and awful. And there isn't much to see.
No.
It's just a border between two countries who are actively at war with one another and a vast expanse. There is that village that I mentioned, but it's just abandoned buildings, most likely, that you can look at with binoculars and a North Korean flag. Other than that, it's just sort of a river and some rolling hills. So on a tour, they're really kind of selling the idea that you're looking at this forbidden police state, but there is not much to see, and that's just a fact,
Yeah, no, I agree. And even the fact that it's been commercialized is a little bit strange. Certainly the way that the tour is delivered. I mean, I remember feeling very much so that I was on an organised tour and we were just sort of window shopping. It was like, oh, look, that's North Korea. That's where they do the bad things. And that's what could have been and all this sort of stuff. And it was just quite a strange experience altogether, really. I don't think the way that the DMZ tours are delivered are as, what's the word I'm looking for here? As neutral as one might like, but you can understand why they wouldn't be, I suppose.
Yeah, well, we had I think like you, on my tour, there was a woman who defected from North Korea. Mm-hmm. And she came onto the bus and had some stuff to say.
She's cracking jokes as well.
She was doing stand-up at the front of the bus.
You think Dennis was funny? Wait till you get a load of this.
She was like, what's the one leader that's fatter than your mom? It's Kim Jong-un. But people could ask her questions and stuff, and they were translated by Dennis with a bit of a comedic twist on them. And, she fled through China. You have to flee through China because obviously you're not crossing over the border into the Republic of Korea.
Not even dressed as a coal miner.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only way you can do it. But it's tempting because once you get to Korea, the Republic of Korea doesn't recognize North Korea as a country. So you immediately get citizenship into this wacky, crazy, vibrant, westernized, fashionable, sexy, good food culture country if you can just get there. So she managed to escape through China for what was then about $20,000 that she saved up. But now she says that same service would cost about $4 million.
$4 million?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's just impossible to save in that regime. So
yeah, so
ironically, the only person who could escape to Korea is Kim Jong-un himself.
Yeah. Yeah, so on my tour, it must have been a different lady because the figures were different from memory. I think maybe this lady that I met, she escaped much earlier, so it was about 3,000, 4,000 US dollars. And I had thought she said that the current rate for escapees is about 70 or 80,000 US dollars currently, and then people will sort of hide you in vehicles, put you across, transport you across borders through China, down through Southeast Asia, and then sort of back into South Korea that way. But it is what these people go through in order to get away is. Well, yeah, I mean, it's hell. It's just so nail biting is not the right word.
It sounds like it's very possible that 4 million was a joke figure thrown out by Dennis.
4 million. Maybe 4 million. What's the currency? Won. Korean won.
I don't know in North Korea. I don't think they use the South Korean currency. It would be a bit of a nuts move, wouldn't it, if they had Republic of Korean Confucian scholars on the back of their banknotes?
Yeah, but actually, I was told that some people want to go back. Some people defect to South Korea, and then just after a number of years, they just decide to go back to North Korea.
Well, you can't go back, can you? Maybe be killed immediately.
I don't know. I just don't have anywhere near enough information on the topic. But I do remember being told that.
It's funny you mentioned currency, actually, because at the end of my tour, Dennis, as by way of a little upsell, he was like, does anyone want to buy any North Korean currency?
Really?
And there was a British guy sat next to me on the bus, and he was like, oh, I fucking want some of that. And I was like, do you? Because it seems like shit. Honestly, I don't want to like poo-poo your souvenir idea, but it seems like probably it's just like worthless. And a Google JPEG of what the currency looks like would be just as fun.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh yeah, I really want that. And then he Googled it and showed me on his phone. He was like, oh yeah, look, any North Korean currency sold to you in South Korea, automatically it has to have been taken out of circulation and is essentially just worthless and a piece of art. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, well, I'm glad you did that research. And then when Dennis came round, he fucking bought $20 worth.
Under the peer pressure, maybe. That's so funny. You've just twigged a memory, actually. Because we had the opportunity to buy some notes and some coins as well. Some of them are presented in little booklets and stuff. And there was an English girl on my tour that I was chatting to throughout the day, doing various different bits. And when we got to that part of the tour, she came over and asked if I was going to buy some. And I was really dismissive. I said, "Why on earth would I want to spend my money on that?" And she had pulled some out that she'd already bought. I was like, "Oh,
no!"
And I was like, "Oh, sorry."
You were like, "It's actually a stupid thing to get, and anyone who gets it is not only an idiot but not very good looking." That's what I think. Oh, sorry, Mum.
But yeah, I put my foot in it there a little bit. Oh, you did get... No, sorry, that was just a joke. That was a joke. No, I'm
going to buy some myself.
Yeah.
He has to buy some to make it up.
Yeah, what did you get? Oh, you did? Yeah, I was going to get that one, yeah. Dear, oh dear. But worth doing, probably.
Worth doing. I'm glad I went. I'm glad I had a little peep over the border, and I think that it was an experience, it was an experience. And then after I went to the DMZ, I went to the Korean War Museum and actually learned about what I was looking at. And then I thought, well, that is interesting. So make sure you go to the accompanying museums if you're in Korea.
Yeah, completely. Now, I do know that you had sort of mixed feelings about going to North Korea. Did seeing North Korea from the DMZ change whether you're going to go or not in the near future?
Oh, you mean actually visiting North Korea as a country?
I do mean actually entering and going on one of those 10-day guided, heavily restricted, contrived.
Yeah, I still just don't think it's interesting because it is so contrived.
Yeah.
A tour where you're literally shown the things that a country wants to show you.
Yeah.
I just don't think interests me. It would be like going to London and you're like picked up at the airport and taken straight to a hotel in London. And then you're allowed to like go and see the crown jewels. And then they take you to like the Albert Hall and then stuff you back in the hotel. And you're allowed to eat a very strict diet of Yorkshire pudding. It's just like, it doesn't interest me. It's just like you're showing such a tiny slice of what the culture actually is. In actual fact, if for a moment you were allowed off that tour and just free into London, you'd get your phone stolen by someone on an e-bike and your holiday would be over.
Yeah, something that's so heavily curated by someone who hasn't got your interests at heart, I think is not very interesting at all for me. So yeah, put that one on the old back burner for a while. We'll see how things unfold.
There we go, Adam. I'm continuing to enjoy my time in the Republic of Korea. In next week's episode, I'm going to tell you about me spending 24 hours in a Korean bathhouse. I'm going to talk about hiking in the mountains of Sokcho. It's all very, very exciting stuff. If you don't mind, I'll leave you with a joke, and the joke is this. My middle name is subscribed to us on Patreon. So if you want to spend a little bit of money, why don't you call me by my middle name? There's a link in the description, and we'll see you all next week.
We'll see you there. Bye.